right. Hey, welcome back to the Kristen and Roman Show, episode 3. Exciting. I am Roman Wyden.
And I'm Kristen Brown.
And today we're going to talk about the R word. That's right, responsibility. Such an interesting word, you know? If you look it up in the dictionary, you get a few, I would say, similar descriptions. And what I wanted to share is just a couple real quick. So one says the state or fact of having a duty to deal with something or of having control over someone. Like a true leader takes responsibility for their team and helps them achieve goals. Another one is the state or fact of being accountable or to blame for something. The group has claimed responsibility for a string of murders in that case. The third one, the last one, is the opportunity or ability to act independently and make decisions without authorization, as in we would expect individuals lower down the organization to take on more responsibility. So those are some of the typical descriptions. Now, I want to start out first by quickly establishing what we feel is responsibility is not. So I'm going to ask you, Kristen, a prompt question that I didn't tell you I was going to ask you.
Ooh,
So
juicy.
what it is, when you hear someone comes in the room and you hear someone say, this is you, right, Kristen, you hear someone say, whose responsibility is this? What do you actually hear?
Gosh, whose responsibility is this? Well, I guess it depends on the context of it, to be honest. That's what I would think first off. Like if someone's job is to feed the
Got
dog.
it. Absolutely. Now, so let me follow up with that, right? Usually what we hear, I believe, when somebody says like, who's responsible for this, right? We hear, whose fault is this, right? In that case, the one you mentioned is more of a duty, right? Like one of
Yeah.
the descriptions said. But when people come at you and go, who's responsible here? What most people hear is who messed something up? Whose fault is it? Who did this, right?
Yeah.
And so that's not what we're talking about today. We're talking about responsibility as a way of being so that we can take on life powerfully and have that ability to respond to anything, right? Powerfully, what happens in life. Why don't you start us off and maybe share a little bit about how you've come to see responsibility differently in your life from where it was before, right?
Yeah. Well, what you're talking about is bringing forth in my mind the fact that for many people, taking responsibility feels shameful. They feel bad about it because if I take responsibility for this, this means there's something wrong with me. This means I messed up. This means I'm no good. I'm unworthy, whatever it might be. And I changed that in my own mind and my own narrative. And I'm not saying that I automatically went to that. However, I decided that this is my life and things that are happening to me and around me are my responsibility because I'm the only person who can care for me. I'm the only person who can keep me down, and I'm the only person who can lift me up. So when I started to take full, radical, 100% responsibility for all my experiences, the opposite of shame happened. It actually put me in the power seat. And I don't mean that in an egoic way. I mean that put me back in the driver's seat of my own life because I was at the mercy of all of the stuff that was happening around me and staying in victim mode.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I just want to say you touched upon something already, that's the word power, right? Like I believe that, and this is for us to go deeper into it, but as an overview, I believe that when we take responsibility for anything in life, now this is a very spiritual view and we can go into that, but when we actually say what just happened, what's in front of me, whether you believe in the everything happens for a reason or manifestation or karma, whether you believe, let's leave that aside for a moment. But if we were just to look at something in front of us, like a flat tire, for example, right? You're driving on the freeway, boom, flat tire. and you go, ah, what the F? Like this wasn't supposed to happen, and da da da. We can go into two places. We can go into the victimhood, right? Like you mentioned, or you can go into power. And I believe we would have to, in that moment, take on this, what I love this metaphor of like life happens for me, not to me, right? So now, what could this flat tire be here for, right? It could be that you meet the tow truck driver and he gives you a beautiful message, or you find out you have common friends, or you may slow down that day and realize, I've been going way too fast. I should have changed these tires 4 months ago and I didn't, and I'm procrastinator. Maybe I need to, whatever it is, find the gift, right? That's the power. That's be able to say, I'm responsible for this moment. I get to respond. I have the ability to respond powerfully to this in this flat tire moment. What am I going to do? Victimhood or power, right?
I really love that you bring up, is this happening for me or to me? Because this is what's cool about these type of powerful statements is that you didn't know me 10, 12 years ago. And that was one of the statements that changed my life. I couldn't tell you where I read it or who I heard it from. But when I realized that everything in my life is happening for me, it's a reflection of something and it's showing me what's going on. And so when I said, okay, this is happening for me, no matter if it's something bad, I was like, what am I supposed to be learning here? Was the question that I would follow that up with. What am I supposed to be learning here? And this was true, Roman, even when people were being the most heinous to me, when someone's being a complete asshole, and I'm looking at this, and of course, immediately I'm like, they're wrong. And they are wrong. They shouldn't be doing what they're doing. They shouldn't be acting like that. They have a choice not to do that. And it's not the right thing to do for healthy relationships. Yet, I said to myself over and over and over and over again, and I find that this is something that people want to fight about. They struggle with, their ego struggles with this, is that I said to myself, what am I supposed to be learning in this situation with this person acting like this? What am
Yeah.
I supposed to be learning? And I will tell you that I returned back to that and back to that. I cannot tell you how many thousands of times, no matter who it was in my life, I said, what am I supposed to be learning? Because this is happening for me, not
Yeah.
to me. So if I put myself in that victim mode of, oh my God, everybody acts like this and everybody's terrible and my life sucks and I'm so unlucky or whatever it might be that I was saying to myself, when I started just flipped that, actually, it's really was almost like taking off a filter.
Yeah.
I was seeing
Yeah.
through victimhood. And when I started to see it through, this is for me. Thank you, universe. What am
Yeah.
I supposed to be seeing here? And then the second part is that I got quiet because if I said, what's this for? And I thought, and I'm trying to figure it out. And I'm in the old thinking. I'm in the old thinking. So I said, this is new. So what does this mean? And then somehow I would receive messages from the divine that would say something really small, like speak differently to this person or have a better boundary or whatever it might be. Like, and
Yeah.
they were small, short sentences because the divine doesn't talk to me in paragraphs. It's like quick little, quiet little things. And I remember one point the divine said to me, because I was going through something really, really difficult and I was just dealing with someone that was just maddening. And I remember being in my car and holding onto my steering wheel and yelling, what do you want me to do? I'm like, what is going on here? And you know what the voice said? Keep going. Really? Keep going in this mess? And I remember saying, really, out loud. But then I stopped and I said, keep going. What do I typically do in these situations? Keep going. Don't give up. Keep moving forward. Find a way. And so these small things actually in that particular relationship started to heal because I started doing things differently,
Yeah.
not because I was trying to change this other person that was acting heinous.
Yeah. That's beautiful. Thanks for sharing that. And it brings up this idea of, I call it the power meter, right? It's a spectrum. So if we take 0 zero responsibility and we say, well, it's that person's fault or that car or this situation,
Mhm.
then we have zero power and we give 100% over there. It's 100% their fault, right? But if we go, even if we go 50-50, which is the second one, there's three of them, even 50-50 only gives you 50 power and 50 blame. So as again, you're giving 50% of power away to the other person or the circumstances or even God, right? Whoever you blame. But what I think really works, which we will talk about, is this idea of I'm 100% responsible here, zero over there, because over there, they have their own 100%, right? And we talk about relationships a lot. So I'd love to get into that as well. How do you in a relationship take 100% here and 100% there? Because that's the only way to have power. Because if you say, and you illustrated this, right? If you go, okay, what do I have to do with this? What can I do here? And then move from there. That's true power, right? That's not force, that's power.
I gotta tell you that this whole time you're talking, I'm just smiling. I'm just like, even if it was a small smile, people can't see what's in my body, but this topic is so incredibly important because it's literally what changed my life. I had to move out of victimhood and into victory. And I remember standing over an abyss, and it actually looked like this in my mind's eye. And I have a video where this is on. I found the perfect picture. It's like this hole in the ground with this small berm around it. And I was looking in there, and it was the abyss of victimhood because I had the right, Roman. You know, this person cheated, this person did this person was abusive, this, the list went on. And I had the right to be a victim. And my ego, it was like, oh yeah, it's so bad. You've been done so wrong, Kristen. But I remember looking in that abyss of victimhood. And this happened in a, I would say meditation kind of thing. I was very quiet and with my eyes closed, and I was meditating when this whole thing came about for me. And I looked in that pit and I thought, fuck this. I am not anybody's victim. And I chose victory. And I remember in my mind's eye be turning my back on that abyss, and I walked away. I did not know what that was going to mean. I didn't know where I was going to go. I just knew that wasn't an option, that kept me powerless. Anytime we're in victim mode, we're powerless because we're at the mercy of everything that everybody does around us, and we're forgetting. And that's
Yeah.
what this whole journey is about, is returning back to our personal power. But there's one thing that I learned. It's amazing to me how if there's, man, I can read one sentence in a book. If I get one thing out of a book, even though there's books on my shelf that I love and I've read top to bottom, and several I've read a couple of times, but this one thing came out of Marianne Williamson's Return to Love, which is literally one of my favorite books. She worded it differently than I'm going to say this, but basically, if the person that you're dealing with is 80% of the problem, let's say this person really is heinous and they're narcissistic and they're acting like a jerk and they're doing all these things to you, there's 20% that's you. And I had to take 100% responsibility for my 20%.
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying? Even though I was
Mhm.
showing up healthy and not doing the things that this person was doing, there's 20% of me that was doing something.
Yeah.
That when I took responsibility for that 100%, and this is just a different way of saying what you were saying,
Yeah. I love that.
that's when my life started to change. Because
Mhm.
there is sometimes, and I want to be very sensitive to the fact that people have some awful people in their lives, and they've had some horrible things that have happened to them. And I understand that. And I have too. I mean, the list goes on and on and on.
Yeah.
And yet I said, screw that. What can I do? How can I put myself back in the power seat and change my own life? And I made myself my own authority.
Yeah. Yeah. That's thanks for saying that. And I also want to say that obviously there are victims and perpetrators in the case of physical abuse and such. We're not really talking about that kind of victimhood. If you're listening to this, you know what we're talking about. It's really a self-pity party in victimhood, right? And that's something that is basically you give away all the power to the other person or circumstance. There's no, like you said, there's no power in being in victimhood. It may feel good because we're getting a pity, right, from other people. Oh, poor you, and oh yeah, you should definitely be depressed, or you should definitely, right? And again, if it's a real physical abuse, sexual abuse, any real sort of victim a case, then yes, that has to be processed and healed with through therapy and whatnot. But we're talking about the daily little things that happen of the guy who cuts us off in front of us driving, or the long line at the post office, or whatever, right? And where we go like, oh, I can't. And I just saw a recent skit again, and maybe we can post it in the show notes. I don't know if you've seen Bob Newhart. He has a skit, an old skit, comedy skit on Mad TV called "Stop It," where he plays this psychologist, and this woman comes in and she wants to see him, and he says, "Well, I barely take new clients, but great. Well, here's the deal: something like $5 for the first 5 minutes, and that's it. I don't go any longer." And she's like, "Okay."
Oh,
So she
wow.
starts. And she goes into this like, well, like that, da, da, da. And he's like, okay, well, I'm about to tell you two words that. And he goes, stop it. And she's like, well, no, but then it's because my relationships with men, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, stop it. So he just keeps, right. And of course, it's simplified, but it really is in a way like that. And I want to give a quick example. Yesterday, I was a bit in a funk. I was on a Zoom call, a business meeting, and I was in a funk, and I really just contribute and be a player, like a team player. I just didn't. It came down to setting intentions, and I was like, and we talked about state of being. And what I did after the call is I put on some happy music. I put on some Jack Johnson, got into a shower,
I was
and
listening to him at the gym this morning.
oh, nice. Yeah, I know. It's happy music. And I was dancing. And I came out of that shower and I was no longer in this mopey, poopy victim, poor me. I'm going through a divorce, and I just moved, and I'm tired, and it's not sunny outside, and I don't, whatever it is. And it's not to,
Can anybody
again, not,
relate? If you guys can relate, please comment below.
yes.
Put your little hand raised emoji, because man, we could all do this.
Yeah, it's easy. It's right there, right? It's right there because it's so familiar for many of us in our upbringing, right? Or just from past hurts and pains. So, anyway, but I want to talk about relationships and how maybe share some examples for you, what the process was like to become a partner and be in a partnership where you actually can have a conversation around both, taking full responsibility for things.
Oh
That's
gosh, yes.
huge.
Okay, before I answer that, I want to go
Yeah,
backwards to talk about, I'm just beaming over here. I love this topic.
yeah.
This is my favorite topic, in the one of the favorite topics. I have a lot of other favorite topics, but I want to go back to that alluring feeling of victimhood real quick. I really want to put an
Yeah.
exclamation point on that. And I would love for people to understand this notion that we have two sides of the psyche. We have our lower self, our ego self, our fearful self, our victim self. And then we have our higher self, our God self, our loving self, and our faithful self, and our victorious self. And when we are in that pity partying state, we are actually in our lower self. Nothing good happens over here. This is fear, this is stuckness, this is pity party, this is victimhood, and nothing good. And when we are in this state, we are vibrating from a certain vibrational frequency that is going to attract more of that to us. Okay.
Yep.
So when I learned the fact that there was two sides of the psyche, and by the way, there's no in between. We're either in this or we're in this at any given time period. And when I said, okay, I'm in this state is not going to serve me. And by the way, it's a bunch of big fat lies, because that's what the ego does, is it lies to us. And so I said, I'm going to start moving more into this state, which leads me to the point that we can get pretty grooved in our brains to go down, I call it the Hershey Highway, victimhood. This happens, victimhood, car, interstate crash, victimhood, whatever it might be that's stopping us in our day, victimhood, victimhood, victimhood. It just can take one tiny shift in perception from fear to love that can change that. Thank you, God, for this delay on the freeway, because I don't know what it's stopping me from, what accident or something else that it could have come up. Thank you that this person didn't call me back. Thank you that this love interest didn't work out. whatever it might be, we must become thankful and grateful for these things because things are happening for us, not to us. The other thing, I'm just going to dip back real quickly to, is that you were talking about the Bob Newhart thing and just stop it. And what came to my mind is that the healing journey really is simple and people really make it complicated. But what's only complicated about this is the limiting beliefs and the fear of the unknown and the letting go of control. That's the stuff that we have to unpack in order to do these things, okay? Because like he said, just stop it. It's that simple. It is that simple with so many things in our life that if we learn, like I learned that I'm in control. I learned that I'm not a victim. That's a simple concept, but retraining my brain out of victimhood or learning to take responsibility or dealing with the shame of taking responsibility or whatever it might be, that's where the work was. But the concepts are very simple. So
Yeah,
the
I
question,
love that.
yeah. So
Yeah,
the,
thanks for saying that because it really is a matter of disrupting that habit, that pattern that goes off the deep end. It's like, I'm just gonna slip right back into my pajamas, go to bed and cry. That's fine once in a while, right? I do that
for
sometimes. You
sure.
need, right? But when we see it coming as this theory of the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go, where you just take action even if you don't want to, and something shifts, I didn't want to put on Jack Johnson or jump in the shower at that time, but I was like, I need a disruptor, and I did it, and it totally worked.
Oh,
Different day.
it is. And it's just so fun that you mentioned that today because I was making banana pancakes at the gym this morning. So
How do you make banana pancakes
it's
at the
one of
gym?
his songs, making banana pancakes.
Oh, got it. I thought you
Yeah.
said you're making. I'm like, what kind of gym is that?
No, I do want to tell this quick story though about like this is part of taking responsibility that people would maybe not even see as taking responsibility. So in 2015, my mom passed away in January. My dad passed away in May. My dog passed away in August, and then my stepfather
Wow.
passed away the following May. Now, I'm a strong person. I've dealt with a lot of death in my life, but this affected me in a way that I didn't expect. And it had given me so much anxiety that I didn't even know I had because now I felt like an orphan. Because I always had this foundation under me. Okay, they live within 10 miles of me my whole life. We're very close, and I always had this like foundation. My mom and dad. And
Mhm.
I felt like in hindsight, when I word it, I say that I felt like I was free falling. And it's like when you hold a baby and you lower it down real quick, its arms go like this, right? That's how I kind of felt. I was like, oh, I was just free falling. I did not realize this until one day I had just crossed through an intersection, not going very fast at all. And you know those middle lanes where people can pull into before they merge into
Mhm.
traffic. And I'm going like 20 miles an hour. And someone pulled into the middle lane out of a parking lot. And it's nothing was happening. And I was like, and I was like, Kristen, for the love of Pete, what is going on here? And I said, okay, what caused that anxiety? What was that? This is taking responsibility. And
Mhm.
I said, what caused that anxiety? I said, what thought just went through your head that had you act like that? Because that was abnormal for me. And the thought was, I'm going to get killed and my kids are going to be orphans. That went through my head so fast that it heightened me up. It scared the crap out of me. So I continued to drive. And at that point, I realized I'm like, I have been walking around, driving around, living life from this state of anxiety had been like a year. I didn't even know it until that moment. But I asked myself, I took responsibility. Why are you freaking out? And for the next mile up the road, I said to myself, you are surrounded in a white bubble of light. You are going to be here for a long time for your children, blah, 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 blah. By the time I got to the next light, I was onto my shopping list. But this is what taking radical responsibility is
Yeah.
about. It's like you going, I feel like crap after this phone call. I'm going to take responsibility and figure out a way to not feel like this.
Yeah. Yeah, because I could have easily blamed, oh, the meeting was kind of boring. I don't really like the meeting, or my kids were up late last night, little fuckers. Now I'm tired. See, I mean, again, it's not unjustified. I mean, it's justified. We can run through that list of potential blameage Or when we could do that and then, shift the pattern, disrupt that habitual way of being. And that's always available, right? It's that rubber band on the wrist philosophy, right? Which you demonstrated in a bigger way when you go into these kind of traumatic, whether it's anxiety or, when people talk about depression. How I feel about ADHD. I feel that most people that say, oh, I have ADHD, they're not really taking responsibility for their state of being, for their behaviors, their struggles. They're actually, in a way, saying, oh, I have this thing, and that's why I can't find my keys or focus and all that. And I always say, you've heard me say this, the struggle is real, the behavior, right? But it's not for us to then sort of lean on and rest on and basically blame the thing. Oh, I have that thing, so I'm blaming that thing. It's not me, right? No, not taking responsibility. It's not me, it's the thing that causes me to be this way. There's no power in that. The only power you have there is to get some medication and feel a temporary power, which really is like force. You're forcing, you're controlling, you're trying to manipulate life, versus really taking responsibility and go, I do want to calm down. I do want to learn how to focus. Let me go a little deeper here, right? That's taking responsibility for a disorder. And then there's many areas we could explore. I think relationships are always, everything's a relationship, right? Everything we do with people or things, we have a relationship to.
So I want to mention to anybody who's new here that Roman has a actual podcast. It's an audio podcast, and he has transferred it now to YouTube, and it's called ADHD is Over. And Roman has interviewed, this is one of the richest, full-bodied podcasts, not only from his own personal experiences, but also from the people that he interviewed. So if you, someone you love, anybody in your life who is dealing with ADHD or wants to know more about it from so many amazing people, that I highly recommend you check that out. I want to go
Thank
back
you.
to you're welcome. I want to go back to the one thing we were talking about when you said disrupt the pattern. Again, I'm kind of coming out of my chair today. I was so excited to have this conversation because disrupting the pattern is how we make things happen in our life. And I want to invite people to give themselves grace that you're in a pattern, because this is part of the brain. This is how we're wired. We are wired to get into patterns to save us, to protect us. We have defense mechanisms, coping mechanisms, like we've talked about. We will talk about a lot on this podcast. The pattern doesn't mean that it's healthy, and it doesn't mean that it's here to stay. It's just for now. Our brain designs things to help us through a moment. However, I want to circle back to stress and anxiety are not our natural states, but society has made it so. Oh, it's just part of being life. Yes, we're going to have those stressful moments, but it's not our natural state. And being somebody who has felt those moments of peace in my life, I wanted more. Again, this is why I want people to give themselves grace on this journey. I was unconscious to the fact that I felt like a free falling orphan. I didn't know that. I got kids I'm taking care of, his business I'm running, dogs I'm training, friends running amok. I had all these things going on in my life. I had not stopped to look at how I was feeling. I was taking care of a lot of things and a lot of people. But then when I realized, wow, I'm functioning from a survival mode right now, I got to take control of that. And I want to just circle back to one more thing that you said, is that yes, shitty things happen to us. There is crappy things that happen to us, and emotions are human, and they're natural, and they're normal, and we're going to have an emotion. So it's not that Roman and I are ever saying don't feel the feelings or don't process through. We're talking about, what is your mindset going to be regarding this thing? What is the story that you're going to tell yourself regarding this situation? Because
Yeah.
had I chosen victimhood and to jump into that abyss, I even remember thinking, if I went in there, I'm never coming out. Like, I am just going to be a bitchy, bitter woman, probably cat lady, because I love cats, probably have 8,000 of them. You know what I'm saying? I make
Yeah.
a joke, but I knew that was like, it was so alluring to me. But when I said no, my God, I took my life back.
Yeah, you did. And I want to add to that, that was beautiful because, there's this moment where when we say take responsibility for it, it's really taking responsibility to go deeper and to look at the emotions and feelings we've been running from since our childhood, right? That's what addictions are. That's what disorders are really a manifestation of suppressed, like I always say, depression is a result of, you know, suppression and repression. Because
Yes.
when we
Mhm.
push things down, it's going to try to come up and it doesn't feel good because we're trying to avoid it and we're trying to numb ourselves with medication or distractions, addictions, and so forth. So I agree. We're all about saying, I would say you got to feel it to heal it. So go look for those patterns and see where the trauma is in the childhood. There's always a reason why someone's anxious. There's a reason why you're depressed. It's not because you have depression or have anxiety. Those are not constant states. Those are things that can be transformed, right? Rewired. But if we stop looking for where the patterns started and why they started, if we don't do that work, then we can't, in the moment that you describe, possibly take responsibility because you're like, I have fucking anxiety. So now you're blaming the anxiety or this driver that cut me off, right? So now, because of you, I have anxiety. You triggered me, right? This whole trigger word triggers me, like how often it's used in our society now. But really, most people now use it to say, you just gave me anxiety. You triggered me. But that person, and I'm not everybody, but a lot of these people that I hear and I see it in interviews, it's clear they have not taken responsibility and done the real detective work, right? We should be detectives of our lives. We should
Mhm.
know where it comes from so we can work through it through therapy, workshops, 12-step programs, whatever. That's taking full responsibility, not, oh, I'm triggered, your fault. Now, there's moments when people do triggering things, we just remove ourselves. I do that. If I'm around something triggering, I go the other way, or I say no, thank you, or this is not for me. I don't have to be like, you triggered me. This is triggering to me. It's like, yeah, sure. Maybe in a clinical setting, you can say, this is really triggering to me. And then the next question would be like, let's talk about it. Why is that triggering? Versus, no, you triggered me. So F you, right? I just want to throw that in there because
I
that's
think
the
that's great.
ultimate denial. Yeah.
I actually want to go a little bit into triggers because the word has been misused. Okay. Because a true trauma trigger, what the true word came from is when the brain thinks it saw something that hurt them in the past and it activates our fight flight. Okay. It
Yeah.
activates, it's a panic feeling. It is like hitting your knee with a rubber mallet at the doctor's office. We can't stop it. It's a huh, kind of a feeling because the brain is always constantly on the lookout for the things that hurt us in the past. And it will even notice things that just might sort of be an indicator of that thing, even if it's not. And then we will be triggered. Okay.
Yeah.
That's what a true trigger is. But people have used it into, I'm feeling an emotion. So now they're calling feeling an emotion a trigger. And there's a huge delineation between this. Okay. Feeling an
Yeah.
emotion is feeling an emotion. Being truly psychologically triggered, the true sense of the word, like PTSD type trigger, is very, very different. So if somebody is triggering you, you don't like what they're saying, you don't like what they said or what they have done, and you're having an emotion over this thing, that's a flag to say, I've got somewhere I need to look.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
emotions are flipping indicators. Emotions are beautiful, and the emotional guidance system is just as serving to us as the cardiovascular system, the nervous system, the respiratory system, the reproductive system. It is a system. It's called the emotional guidance system. And I talk about this in my book. And that is an indicator. So I have noticed if something's making me angry, then I feel like I've done wrong or I've been perpetrated upon or what have you. That's just for me to go within and decide what this means for me. One, I could be making up a story. Maybe I wasn't even perpetrated upon. Maybe I was taking things personally. Or it could be this is a true injustice and I need to set a boundary. But at any rate, just because I'm feeling an emotion about something doesn't mean that other person is automatically wrong. It means, what does this mean for me? And this is where getting super honest with ourselves. This is a hard thing for some people, is being honest with yourself. And I will tell you, a person who doesn't like lies, who was raised by a mother that was like, I hate lies. This is what she would say to us with her big, long finger. And, she would say it to us. So I was raised to be a very truthful person. And I also realized over time how many people did not want to look at the truth
Yeah.
because the truth scared them. And sometimes that means, I have seen this with people, is that especially through coaching and just coaching everyday people, not only my clients, but just talking to people in life, many times people are afraid to own an emotion, a feeling, or a thought, or a belief, or whatever it is, because, like, if here's an example, is he the type of person that you want to live the rest of your life with? The answer is a blaring no. They know it's a no, but they're like, well, God, because a lot of times people don't want to own the answer because it means blank. If I admit that this woman or man is not for me, or I'm not enjoying this relationship, that means, and fill in the blank. That means I got to leave tomorrow. That means I'm going to be alone. That means, but the list goes on.
Yeah.
How about people? I want to invite everybody who's listening, being completely honest with yourself doesn't mean you have to do anything. That's a huge step in and of itself, is to get the fuck out of denial.
Yeah.
Okay. And I say this with so much love, but in a very tough love kind of a way, because I don't do this, what I do for a living. I didn't break through my fear of public speaking and all my nerves and all my self-doubt because I'm trying to control people, because I wouldn't do it. I do this because I love humanity and I love human beings and I know how innocent we are and I want people to thrive. But we have to do the hard things sometimes. And what sometimes is just being honest with self.
Yeah.
And it
Well,
doesn't mean we have to go tell anybody else. I want to tell this one last thing, is that a lot of my journey was so internal and so private because I had love in my life. That's not the point. I had support in my life, but people didn't get it. And so if I said something to them, they would come out with some weird thing and I'd feel not understood, or it would confuse me. Or so I started to just really make this about me and my relationship with me and admit things to myself. You don't have to go run around and admit it to the world, nor does it mean you have to take what you believe is the next step, because you don't really know what the next step is yet.
I love that. And I was going to go back and say something about triggers, but there's no need. You kind of closed that off nicely, and certainly worth its own episode because it's a big topic.
Let's do it.
But this, I'm smiling too, because this topic about telling the truth, I was thinking recently, I mean, as humanity, right? The lies and deceit and cheating and so forth, it runs so deep. And it's not because it's a defect of the human kind. It's not that some people are just bad and some are good. There's just levels of self-deceit that comes from our how we were parented, right? It was a coping mechanism, either to make yourself smaller so that you wouldn't outshine someone else, or if you were told you were not good enough, you don't matter, you're never going to amount to anything, right? Then you tell yourself that, which is also self-deceit, because ultimately we're all souls, human beings that are capable of doing anything, achieving anything we want to, we set our minds to, I believe. And so this idea of not telling the truth is huge, because it sort of becomes this gaslighting of oneself. And over time, we believe it, right? We're like, oh yeah, well, I guess I'm not good enough, or I don't matter, or I told the truth here, even though we
Or
lied,
I'm
or
not
this
at
is
fault, or I don't have any
not my fault.
responsibility to take.
And so that's why I wanted to talk about, when I said relationships, there's one important thing that I want to share in regards to responsibility, because I went through this myself in life. I'm going through this right now, and I'm going to keep details out of it because I'm an open book, but I just want to be sensible towards my own divorce and the people involved.
There's more
But
people involved. Yeah.
yeah, and there's a moment that comes in a I'm going to say a couple's life, in a marriage relationship, you fill in whatever you're in, right? If you're in a committed relationship, there's a moment, we're talking about truthfulness, where I had infidelities in my marriage. I cheated, which is lying, which is hiding, which is really an act of cowardice, not speaking up, what I need over time, just doing it and hiding it, right? It's an act of cowardice. And it's not that I blame myself for being a coward. I've worked through that guilt.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a wounded child that had a coping mechanism hoping to fill the void. So I'm aware of that, right? But the interesting thing is when it comes to truth telling and responsibilities that most couples that I coach, I've talked to, let's say over the last few years, maybe a couple of dozen husbands or partners, male partners, and also female, but it's tended to be more male in my case. And when we talked about cheating, I always would get the answer of like, well, I haven't really revealed everything because I can't. I don't want to. And I don't want to get into the excuses. It's usually because I don't want to hurt her. And that's a whole nother episode because I believe that is complete manipulation. That is the fear of, not being able to deal with the emotions that are going to come your way once you're actually honest, which is why we're not honest. It's that fear. It's not, oh, I love her so much and I want to hurt her.
We
That's
just need to
BS.
pause right there and
Yes.
restate that. We need to put like an exclamation point on both ends of that, like in Spanish talk.
Yes.
Restate that again. Say that again.
Yeah, so when we say, oh, I don't want to be truthful and share my infidelity to my wife, for example, it's not because oh, I love her so much, I don't want to hurt her, because that makes us sound nice. What's underneath that is I'm actually afraid to share the truth because I know it's going to fucking hurt. And that anger that's going to come my way, I don't want to deal with it. And
And what
that's
might happen?
what might happen. And so now we're going from not taking responsibility to actually not wanting to take responsibility for the consequences. Now, in my case, the consequence was moving out, separation, and now divorce. And people could say, oh, that's really bad. I'm sorry. And oh, shit. Or they could say, well, yeah, you got what you asked for, right? It doesn't matter what the answer is to that. I know that in my case, I'm 100% responsible for what I did. I shared it all openly. I dealt with the anger. I'm still dealing with it. I show up for my, still wife. We're still married legally. I show up for my kids. I show up for myself. I'm there 100% responsible. I have no more guilt around that because it's been some time now and I've worked through that for almost 3 years now. But the point I'm trying to make here, which is what you said, this sort of lying to oneself, right? And then lying to the people in our lives and saying we do love them, but I'm not going to be honest because I'm afraid. And also, I don't want to deal with the consequences. I don't want to go through a divorce. I don't want to break up my family because that's bad, right? But that is actually holding that person back from ever truly experiencing like the real power, the true power that they have, that they are. You cannot go, it's a glass ceiling. You cannot go any higher into powerhood if you're not 100% honest. Just
Amen, brother. I'm giving you the beatnik snaps here because
thank you.
there's so many things I want to spin off of that. One
Go
is
for it.
that everything that Roman's saying times a million, that was absolutely gorgeous. There's a song by Triumph, the band Triumph, called Lay It on the Line. And when the lyrics is I don't ask for much, the truth will do just fine. And I love that lyric so much. I actually wrote it on my whiteboard. And just because I just love it, but one, a whiteboard that was in our kitchen because I wanted everybody to see. I don't ask for much. I just want the truth. Because when we have the truth, we're actually dealing with the true thing. We're dealing with the problem. If all this other stuff is going around out here, we're fracturing out all of this energy in places that are not going to move us forward. I don't want to waste any more time. I had a brother when I was 11 years old, I had a brother die in a car accident. Something said to me, don't waste time in this life. Okay. Take responsibility, get shit done, be the person you want to be, love big, do your thing. And one of the things was, I don't want to waste time. I cut to the chase. Someone the other day said to me, you know what I love about you? You say, oh no, it was our mutual friend, Daryl, said that he was quoting you from our last podcast. And he said that you said you say a lot within a small amount of time or something like that. And he said, I really love that about you. He goes, you're just, and I said, yeah, people call me direct. I've been called direct my whole life. And he goes, I love that. I love that about you. And I was like, well, thank you, because there's other people that don't. But that's the point that I wanted to bring up is
Yeah.
that I know me. I know my heart. It is juicy. It is big. It is full. I want the world to sit on my lap, and I want everybody to, I want to tell everybody that they're okay. And
Yeah.
they got a safe place
Yeah.
to be. And
And
I'm going to tell it like it is. And that doesn't mean I'm not talking about, do I look fat in this dress? Yes, you do. I'm not talking about that kind of stuff. I'm saying when I'm having a feeling or an emotion regarding another person in my life, I'm willing to bring it up to him and say, hey, here's what's going on. Because when we got the truth in the room, we can find some type of solution.
Mhm.
And maybe my truth triggers another person's truth. And then, oh, okay, there's more to this. Well, let's go in here and figure this thing out. But I will say, if for anybody, I would love to hear in comments if this is your experience, is if you have ever had where you're the truth teller and people are going like this to you. Like you're just saying too much. They're so incredibly uncomfortable. I've had that in my life because people, and this is innocent. I always want to stress that we are innocent children of God doing the very best we can at any given moment. So this is not dissing anybody. I have so much grace for us little teeny tiny humans on this journey because we're freaking clueless a lot of the time until we're not.
yeah.
But when several of these people were not raised with this type of communication. They were not raised to talk about the hard things or to talk about not even hard things, but sometimes give me the word for it, Roman, like what would sex be or things like that.
Taboo?
The shunnable thing,
Taboo?
the taboo topics, yes. Thank
Yeah.
you, menopause, for that word losing. Um, it happens all the time. So, but some people were not raised to talk like that. And, you and I talked last episode about having conversations with your children about things. And I was like, I don't want any stone unturned in any of my relationships because if it's not brought to the surface, it's going to fester. And
Yes.
me taking responsibility for me is not assuming that so and so knows. It's not assuming that I'm even being clear. So if I say something, I'll say, I loved your feedback on this. Or what do you think? Or is it making sense what I'm saying? Are you understanding what I'm saying? And it just opens up a great big dialogue. And I will tell you this, that there's no festering underbelly in any of my relationships because the people in my life now, we talk about stuff.
Yeah.
And
That's important.
but it was
So
me taking responsibility for one, for my getting my own needs met. That was me taking responsibility, speaking up. Two, yes, sometimes it's going to hurt people or they're going to get literally triggered because it could trigger their shame. It could trigger other thing like the true trauma trigger, or they could get mad and just have an emotion around it. There's a
yeah.
lot that can happen, but I had to be true to me. I
Yeah.
have to be true to me.
It's beautiful. And I just want a quick example that illustrates that really well is I have a friend who I've now known for 4 years almost. And we have a ping pong night, which is sort of a men's night, and we go play ping pong on Friday evenings and we talk and play, and it's super fun. It's really kind of a disguise for a men's group, if you will, right? But my son, my 14-year-old, is a really good ping pong player, and he always wants to play. And so a couple times at the beginning, I would reach out to my friend and say, "Hey, is it okay if my son comes as well?" And he would be like, "No." And at first, I was like, okay. I was a little bit thinking like, "Gee, that's kind of like not considering family or my request or very cold or whatever, right?" But I've gotten used to it. And now I know with him, when it's no, it's no. When it's yes, it's yes. But with most people, and I include myself, I'm still learning that skill of setting boundaries and, stating needs. With most people, you just don't know. They're like, yeah, okay. And then you're not sure, are they just being nice, but they really hate him being there, but they're saying yes? So I started to really appreciate people who
Yes.
set boundaries and tell the truth.
Yes.
Because you know what you got in front of you.
The other day, one of my loved ones was feeling some kind of a way, and the person came up to me and goes, "Are you mad at me?" And I just looked at him and I said, "No." I said, "Wouldn't you know if I was upset? Wouldn't
Yeah.
I speak up?" And the person said, "Yeah." Like, "You don't need to tell stories about me."
That's so big.
Yeah,
You
it's big.
know,
I'm like,
it's
because I will bring it up. And I do want to say to people, because I am the recovering people pleaser. I wrote the book on it. A lot of my work on YouTube and everywhere else is about helping people. I understand, you guys. Rome's not built in a day. There's some things that we have to undo in our lives. And I don't want you to think I'm standing here, this, first of all, 100% healed person, because I ain't. And number two, this is a work in progress and has been. Okay, so give yourself grace on this journey. Be compassionate with where you're at. There's nothing wrong with you. If you're listening to us right now going, I can't tell them the truth. You may not be able to tell them the truth right now.
yeah,
Okay. But
yeah,
know within yourself, I do hear the truth of this. It is the right thing to do. Right now, I don't have the courage to do this. I am willing. Three of my favorite all-time words in this universe. I am willing. I am willing to learn how,
yeah.
willing to cultivate the courage. Anytime that I am struggling with anything, again, I don't know where this came from. I'm assuming it was a Course in Miracles thing via Marianne Williamson, but this whole I am willing, like that, that has helped me through forgiveness. That has helped me through fear. I'm willing. I will say to
Yeah.
God source, I am willing to blank. And that just opens doors for the universe to come
Absolutely.
in because
And
of
thanks for saying that, because I certainly did not, I had a partial reveal of truth and then eventually the full reveal. So it takes time. It's not, some people do it right away, all the way full disclosure, right? Which is amazing. But yeah, you have your own journey, but just know that, and I knew that eventually I just can no longer hide the truth, right? Because it'll become cancer. It'll become me dying early. It's not going to turn into something good. We all know that if we
absolute.
don't, if we don't take responsibility and tell the truth. And I also just want to say I had to smile because this idea came like, what if we lived in the world, talking about triggers, we lived in a world when we get triggered, we go, oh, wow, you just triggered me. Thank you. I'm going to go look at that. I mean, what a different way, right? That's taking responsibility. And what a lightness to be like, oh my God, I'm triggered. What is that? Right? Versus, fuck you, you just triggered me. I mean,
Yeah.
that's world peace and war right there. That's the split, right?
This is something that I only hear out of people on the healing path. This is something I only hear from people who have done some serious work. And I've only heard it from a few people in my life, to be honest with you. And it's such a great point because, well, first of all, when we are triggered, it is going to be a panic feeling. So it is fight or flight. So initially, we may not be able to like, hey, bro, thanks for triggering me, because we are in like trying to save our own life at this point. However, when you can switch the vision from this person is the devil enemy because they're triggering me to I'm so happy to reveal this trigger. I go into triggers a lot in my book. There's a huge section on this because this is such a big part of our healing journey. And when I started to look at all my triggers, the real triggers, all of my projections, these type of things, I started to heal faster because I was bringing things to light that were in my unconscious or subconscious. They were coming
Yeah.
to the forefront from like, wow, I'm triggered right now. What is this indicating? This indicates my fear of abandonment, or I'm making things up. I don't remember what mine were, but it was like my fear of abandonment, or I don't matter, or nobody cares, or whatever it might be. Someone's going to cheat on me, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, I have a wound in this area.
And
Thank you,
that's it.
beloved soul, for being in my life to be a reflection of this in me, because people who are triggered very much want to blame, and it's automatic, it's unconscious. You're making me feel bad,
Yeah.
or you
Yeah.
scared me, or you. And it is the punch reaction. It is the automatic autopilot way of thinking. And yes, we're going to do that because, like I said, it's a knee jerk. We can't
Yeah.
stop that, but we can slow down the whole thing through intentional practice and mindfulness of going, I just I just felt that. Oh my God.
Yeah. And it's
Yep.
all, like you said, those triggers reveal unhealed wounds, right? Unhealed trauma. Trauma is the Greek word for wounds, right? So when we look at it that way, it's like the people we look up to, I think I look up to, and most people look up to, like Buddha or the Dalai Lama, Jesus, you name them, right? They could not possibly be triggered because they've done the work, they've let go, they've healed their wounds. So because I hear people often say like, well, no, but there's really moments to really be triggered. It's like, I get it, and at the same time that's still a sign
Of an
for an
unhealed
unhealed
wound.
trauma.
Period. That's all there is to it. I don't have triggers anymore. And if I do, here's another thing to bring up is that because I don't believe you have to be the Dalai Lama or Jesus or anybody because we can't heal ourselves. And I'm talking about the true trigger, the trauma triggers here. The, they may come up, but they're so small, they're manageable, and I don't even need to speak them.
Yeah.
Nobody even has
Yeah.
to know
Yeah.
because I have done the work. Now I'm thinking of one in particular. I'll share the story really quickly. Is that my second husband was up to no good when he was out on the road doing his stuff, and just you guys fill in the blanks. Well, my now husband went out of town one day and he went up with a bunch of friends to a cabin and they were going to play poker. I wrote about this in my book. You probably know this story.
Yep.
And the lights went out in our home here, and it was me and my daughter home. And I called him. No, I texted him, no answer. Text him again, no answer. And he answers like this. And I called him and no answer. Immediately, I am in trigger. He is at a topless bar. He's, whatever the shenanigans the other one was doing. I had applied what this one was doing onto him.
Mm.
And then when he did finally call back, I restrained myself because I was very aware of what triggers were. But I said, what were you doing? What was happening? He could hear something was weird in my voice. And he goes, oh, I just went outside, forgot the phone inside, started a fire, and all the guys joined me. We're standing by the fire. I'm so sorry. What's up? And I could hear nothing was wrong. He's not doing anything wrong, but still I was
Yeah.
like, it was in me.
Yeah.
And I said, he didn't know anything about triggers or anything. And I said to him, um, just please tell me you're up to no good. You're not up to no good in this, and that. He's like, no. Do I need to come home? Like what? And I go, no, because I knew that would be enabling.
Yeah.
Because of course my inner being was going, yes, come home, save me from this feeling. And I was like, no. I said, but I am triggered. I explained to him what it was. And I said, so I'm going to need about 10 minutes. We hung up the phone. I sat on the edge of my bed, and Roman, I would not let myself move until that feeling passed over me because I was assigning this person to this person, and that was
Yeah.
not okay. And
Yeah.
that was my responsibility. Because if I didn't pay attention to that, then poor Doug would have been the recipient of every time that my brain thought he was doing something weird. And brings us back to the beginning about the triggers. Is
Yeah.
that your brain just thinks it looks the same. The not answering the phone calls is what the other one did.
Yeah.
So
That's,
so my brain went to that, but I said, I can't put this on him. This is my responsibility.
yeah, that's very very evolved in a way that, like literally that's the fork in the road. Because I did a lot of that in my last relationship too, the projecting of like from past partners who cheated on me, I would project it on her. So there's all these things that I now look back and go, oh my God, like I was doing that. And like you said, now I have an internal way of processing these things, sitting with them, and not also obviously putting myself in front of triggering situations or people while I'm healing it, right? That's another very important point, is to you create a safer environment while you're going through that healing, right? And so what you just shared is a beautiful example of like taking responsibility for it yourself. I'm going to process this and then I'll be okay. And then I'll keep doing that until that's healed,
And I
you
will
know?
say this, that one of the things that I did is that I had to say, This one is not that one. This one has, like, I had to slow down the process.
Mm.
He is not him. He is, and then fill in the blanks, reliable, not a cheater, and I had to do this because I needed to train my brain that this was no longer part of my life. I
Hmm.
did not have the same, it was not going to have the same experience over here because it would have been unfair. So, trauma triggers are 100% healable. And if it's something that someone can't do themselves, hire some professional, hire a coach, hire somebody to help you
Absolutely.
through that because you don't is have to suffer. You and
Yeah.
nor do your people have to suffer through this anymore.
Yeah. And now, when I hear people say like, oh yeah, therapy's not for me or 12-step program's not for me or whatever, those things are not for me. It's just an indicator that there's a blind spot that they think they're fine, they can do it by themselves. But really, we all benefit from those modalities. We just do because they're showing us things we're not aware of. Because in my case, like you said earlier, I've lied to myself all my life. I've manipulated my environment so what was coming back wasn't real. What was going out wasn't real. And unless I saw that when somebody pointed it out, a coach or finally a relationship that brought me to my knees and really was like, oh my God, what am I doing here? So I do believe we need other people and other mirrors to show us the blind spots.
And there's so much life on the other side of taking responsibility. And I actually believe it is the first step. If there's a step, it's just, yeah, accepting like something's not right. I am, this is my life. I have a say. I'm going to take responsibility for my life. That's all it has to start with. You don't even have to know how it's going to look or what's going to come from here. Because a lot of times people want to, I don't know, eat the whole world in one sitting, and it just doesn't happen that way.
Right.
However, I will say this, that our world is always reflecting back to us energetically where we're at. So if you're on the same path of victimhood, not taking responsibility, your energy is going to be the same. You're going to have the same experiences in life. However, if you just pivot 3 degrees to one direction because you said, I am an alcoholic, I have a lot of trauma, I have fear of being seen, whatever it might be, just that, your trajectory has changed. And as you
Mhm.
go forward, it doesn't seem like much of a degree, but as you go forward, this line gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. The arc gets bigger and you move further away from your old trajectory. So please know, anybody that's listening, that the tiniest of admissions to yourself, honest moments, and taking responsibility will have, in the long run, the largest impact.
I love that. And I think that's a good place to close, unless you have anything else to say.
I do one more thing.
Yeah, go.
I'm glad you got the memo.
Oh, the gray
We're
shirts.
like wearing almost the exact same color shirt.
We are wearing the
We called
same.
each other, it was like high school, Roman, wear your gray shirt.
Yeah, right. That's awesome. Well, it's been a pleasure again. Thank you all for listening or watching the Kristen and Roman show. This was about responsibility, the R word, and we got many really cool, many more topics coming your way, triggers and divorce, and we talk about the real stuff, right? It's got to
Yeah.
be real to heal. So,
You got to be real to heal. And I really want to invite anybody who's listening to subscribe on either platform, whichever you're listening to. Don't forget to hit the like button because that will activate the algorithms, and leave us a comment below, because these are the conversations that are literally, they start small, but it's like one candle lighting another candle, lighting another candle. And this is how we actually heal collectively, is by healing ourselves, is by taking that personal responsibility, going within, doing what we can for ourselves. And I promise you, that will bleed out in a positive way to the environment around you. And you will start to see people around you heal, which then will start people around them healing. So we would love for this message to reach further out into the world. So yes, so
yes.
please leave a
And
comment below.
If you haven't gotten Kristen's book, The Recovering People Pleaser, yet, please go get that book, because I'm not saying this because she's my partner in crime here and she's a friend. An amazing book. By the way, I recently mentioned it in an online 12-step program on a Zoom
Oh, thank you.
in sort of after share, because people pleasing came up and I mentioned it and a bunch of people wrote it down and they're like, oh my God, yeah, that sounds amazing.
Thank you.
So I'm always referring to the book because it really was my mirror to realize, like, I'm a really nice person. Why? Oh, I'm a people pleaser. Why? And Kristen does an amazing job at telling you why and how you can actually recover from that and become a truthful person. So please get the book. Get the book. Anyway,
And one last thing is that you can still be nice, everybody, and be empowered. They
yep.
can't live in the same house because Roman is still that beautiful, nice person, even
Yeah.
though he
Thank
has
you.
now healed and
That's right.
process of
You
healing.
don't have to be an asshole when you recover from people
Nope.
pleasing, but it's what I call, it's love with truth, right? Like you tell the truth, but you come from love.
Yes. So thank you everybody for being here and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.